Now we are exploring the second principle, and the second principle has to do with the connection between the ocean and the life on Earth and in the ocean, of course. So what is happening, what was happening in the ocean has had a huge impact on what is happening and what was happening on Earth. So without the ocean and without the processes that were developing in the ocean during most of the life of our planet, probably we shouldn't have the what is now on land. So it's really important to take care, to take into consideration these aspects, and particularly because we have to try to understand how are the linkages between, from one side, the inorganic world, so the non-biotic, non-living world, these rocks and plate tectonics and sediments and so on, and the living system. So the relationship between the geosphere and the biosphere that is mediated by the hydrosphere, so the water, and the chemistry. So in the second principle, we have we see again something about plate tectonics, but because we have to discuss and to talk also about rock cycling. So we start to see some of the cycles that we will go through during this course, because most of the energy and matter on Earth is traveling through cycles. So you will heard about a lot of different cycles or cycling paths. And so I like to remind you that, for example, circular economy is not a very, let's say, we didn't invent any wheels as as we thought, because a circular economy is in a certain way is the way that the nature of the system on natural system works. So the second principle has to do with rock cycle and plate tectonics, and with biogeochemical cycles. That means the cycles between biology, geology, and chemistry. So what about rock cycles? Since we know that most of the material that are on Earth and are produced in the ocean, so most of our continent are made by marine rocks or material that are originated in the ocean. So it is important to understand and to learn about that. So even if you don't live in close or by the ocean or close to the ocean, you can find traces of the ocean in your mountains, on your hills, and in your drainage systems, because most of our rocks are made from marine origin. So the rock cycle will explain, or will let the pupils understand, how are the linkages between the continents or the continental crust and the ocean, or the ocean crust and sediments, and also what are some of the most important or the most common rocks that we can find on land. So the rock cycle is the model that represents the genetic relationship of rocks to each other and to magma within the Earth crusts. And rock are constantly being formed, transformed, and recycled through physical, chemical, and biological processes. So we have different kinds of rocks, different processes, but all are linked to each other. So this pictures is about some of the rock cycles that you can find. There is some kind of rocks here indicated, and here you can see also these are the sedimentary environment, so where the sediments, so the pieces of rocks, are moving and are depositing to form sedimentary rocks. So there are different kind of rocks, and so it's important to understand the differences, the origin, and what are the link between ocean and land. And so again, we are talking about plate tectonics, and as I was saying before, the plate tectonic is a model of the Earth dynamics. But since it is a model, it's just something that we agree upon. So just what we know until now. So maybe we can change some idea in the future. And so the lithosphere is divided into 20 rigid portions that are named plates or clods. And the Earth's lithosphere is the rigid outer shell of our planet, including the crust and the upper mantle. So this is some geology, let's say some basic geology. And these plates can move, and then they can collide, that they can we can have different kind of plate boundary. So they are convergent, they are divergent, or so they can crash, they can, let's say, one from go away one from the other, or they can be like that. So you can have different schemes, and that can explain the different characteristics. It's very complex, but you can start with very simple and basic knowledge if the pupils are very young. This is one, I think it's important to understand what are the difference between what is happening inside the Earth and what is happening outside. So what is happening on the surface and what is happening inside. So what are the endogenous dynamics? So what is inside? Something that we cannot see. It originates in the Earth interior. And what is happening outside? That is exogenous dynamics. So what is the action of atmosphere, biosphere, and hydrosphere on the rocks? So these are some of the processes, and you can follow some material from the ocean to the mountains and from the mountains back to the ocean. So we have different examples of land that comes from the sea. So rocks that are forming our continents that come from the sea. This is some of the most famous that are the pillow lavas that they are originated when the lava magma comes out in the ocean. So on the seafloor. And this is a very particular and typical shape of these lavas. And these are, let's say, oceanic crust that are on land, and they are known as green marble or green rocks. And this is another typical example of it. So most of the crust of the ocean is possible to find it on land. And this is another part that is the sediments that were in the ocean. They can have a very strange color, but this is maybe not original. It's after the formation of the rocks. They may have fossils that are witnessing that they are marine rocks, or they have some imprints, some traces of organisms living in the ocean. Or most of the rocks that we know as limestone, for example, are made of these small, very small animals that have these carbonatic shells, or we have a different rock that is this one. This is limestone made of this. This is chert. This is a pieces of chert, and they are made by other organisms that are silica shells. So these are the link between rocks, animals, and chemistry, biology, and what is happening in the rock side. And then one of the most famous, at least in Italy, are the Dolomites. And the Dolomites mountain used to be coral reefs. So this is another wonderful example of rocks originated from the sea. And then the other part of the Principle2 has to deal with the biogeochemical cycles. Cycles is something that has no end and no beginning. So the molecules or elements are moving between different reservoirs by physical, chemical, or biological processes. This is an example of water cycle, even if it is not a real biogeochemical cycle. And biogeochemical cycles are made of reservoir and processes. And the reservoir is the place where the element is contained for a while. And the processes is the way in which that element is transferred from one reservoir to another. So we have many biogeochemical cycles, but the most important are the one that we call the nutrient cycles, is carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and silicon, or silica. Sometimes they call it silica. And this is a complex interplay of dynamic balances through which the circulation of chemical elements from organisms to the environment and vice versa takes place. So is from inorganic to organic, from organic to inorganic again. And in this circulation, we transfer matter and energy. And this is one of, these are the most important, let's say, processes that are acting on our planet. And they mix, and they mix together atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, or geosphere, and biosphere systems. So it's a way to interact. And they are very complex again, but you can learn or study just a little piece of them, or just try to understand how it works, even in taking into account one piece of this big cycle. So this is the carbon cycle. I don't have time to go through them, but just to let you know that there are all of these. And these are some description you can study after the presentation. And some examples of carbon reservoir are, for example, corals or shells, but also these are fossils, let's say, reservoirs. So if when they become stones or part of the stones, they are again a reservoir of carbon. And here again. A nitrogen cycle has to do with the this element that is very, it is important to remind that the nitrogen cannot be fixed by directly from the atmosphere by the organisms, but we need particular bacteria. So there is a specific or kind of some family of bacteria that can do that, and they start, let's say, they help the organisms then to use this nitrogen across all the cycles and the processes. So you can see that these processes are all complex, but you can try to fix some of them or try to connect your activity to some of these cycles or some of these processes. And then we have the phosphorus cycle. That is another important cycle because it's a fundamental part of nucleic acid molecules and ATP and bones. So bones can be one of the point of entry point for talking about phosphorus. And all marine sediments, especially carbonate sediments, contain a small percentages of phosphates, and they are used for many, let's say, how do you say, activities. And maybe the most important is, and known is that the guano is what is the droppings of bat or seabird. And we know that these phosphate mines or deposits are made by birds, and they are used by men in very unsustainable way for them first, and then also for the societies or for the environment. And last but not least is the the silicon cycle. It has to do with the shells of organisms. It has to do, but also with volcanic, for example, activities. But it has to do with recycling, with hydrothermal activities, with the riverine input, and so on. So again, there is a lot of connection in these cycles too. And this, like carbon cycle, is one of the most important for the building of the shells of organisms in the sea. So here
3 minutes, Francesca.
Okay, thank you. See, here are some help to the distinguish between silicon and silica. So silicon is the element, is Si, is the element with atomic number 14, and silica is the silicon oxide. So it's important difference between because it has to do with the different characteristics and also different behavior in the cycle. And we have silica in the sponges. We can have silica in the diatoms. These are there are different organisms at sea that they have silica shells. These are diatoms. The one that I showed in the slide before, they were radiolarians. They are all small organisms, but they are very, very, very common and very, very widespread in the oceans. So they can have a very important weight. Let's say they are very important in the functioning of the system, but also in the formation of rocks. And we can, and just to hand up, I put 3 different kind of, let's say, silica minerals, even if they are not real minerals. But this is volcanic oxygen. So this is volcanic glass is made of silica. This is the silica chert made of biogenic silica. And this is something a little bit special, is a kind of hydrothermal, or more or less, so something in between the two. So as for the Principle1, you can find the scope and sequences conceptual flow diagrams for all your levels of schools, and different topics are in vertical, the levels are in horizontal. So you can scroll down and see what are the topics you can go through, and you can have also the link with other principles. The same is for this. You can have tables again to help you go through it, and topics and subtopics to link to the different levels of your classroom, so K2 or 9-12 or the other in between. Again, we have you can refer to the ocean science literacy, and in this case, I just discovered that we can link this principle with all the big ideas of the Earth science principles. And for what concerns the decades, you can link, I suggest to link mostly to these 3 objectives, but maybe they are linkable to other of them. So, for example, understand a bit marine pollution, sustainable feed for the global population because of the influence on the food web, and also because we have a lot of chemicals that comes from the sea that are now used or looked for the industrial development or industrial processes. And so here are some ideas about the activities you can do at home. Very simple, using sediments to go through the characteristics and working and playing with sediments and water. And you can play with the rocks, and you can explore your beaches or your territory. You can try to use the sediments in the water and try to sample them like we do at sea. Or you can, or you can work on the water cycle. The last was